Zephaniah 2, 4 through 15. Devotional focus verse. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none beside me. How is she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Everyone that passeth by her shall hiss and wag his hand. Zephaniah 2:15. If you were to drive in the area about 50 miles south of Lake Tahoe in California, near the Nevada border, you would come across a town that has, indeed, become a desolation and a place for beasts to lie down in. Bodie, California, became a boom town in 1877, and by 1879 it had a population of around 10,000 and boasted about 2,000 buildings. Sadly, the town was renowned for its wickedness. Murders were a commonplace occurrence. Robberies, stage holdups, and street fights were daily events, and the town's 65 saloons contributed to the problem. 7 breweries were kept busy day and night to supply liquor to the saloons, and whiskey was brought in by horse carriages, 100 barrels at a time. The Reverend F. Warrington, who visited the town in 1881, described it as a sea of sin, lashed by the tempest of lust and passion. One little girl, whose family planned a visit to the infamous town, wrote in her diary, "Goodbye, God, I'm going to Bodie." That phrase became famous throughout the West. However, the boom was over in just a few short years, and by 1882, the town of Bodie was declining. The mines in the area were going bad, and companies went bankrupt. 2 fires blazed through the business district, ravaging the area. Bodie eventually faded into a ghost town. In today's focus verse, the prophet Zephaniah foretold the destruction of the great city of Nineveh. Nineveh was far bigger than a western boomtown. It more accurately could be compared to Washington, D.C., Baghdad, or Tokyo. In spite of its notoriety and seeming invincibility, this wicked city was destroyed so completely that its existence was even questioned until proven by archaeological finds. What lesson can we derive from Zephaniah's prophecy and its fulfillment some 10 years later? Simply this: judgment will come upon the wicked. God does not take sin lightly, and it will be punished. However, we can determine in our hearts to be part of the faithful remnant who humbly worship and obey the living God, and thus escape divine wrath and retribution. Background information. In this passage, God's ire was directed at the countries that surrounded Judah, which also were her enemies. The countries cited in the passage were Philistia, Moab, Ammon, Ethiopia, and Assyria. God's expectation of holiness and righteousness extends to all nations. By sending his warning of impending punishment, God was reminding the people that he alone is God of all, and they would be subject to his judgment if they refused to accept his mercy. The Philistines were Judah's neighbor to the west along the Mediterranean Sea. These people were sworn enemies of Judah and had fought with her constantly. The best known of such conflicts was a battle between David and Goliath. The Philistines frequently attempted to seize Judah's land and practically barred her access to the sea. In verse 4, God pronounced judgment on the Philistines' 4 major coastal cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron. These 4 cities, along with Gath, Goliath's home city, formed the confederation of the Philistines and were the pride of her existence. In addition to proclaiming their destruction, God said he would cause Judah to possess the Philistines' land, including the strategic sea coasts. The judgment pronounced on Ammon and Moab came in tandem, probably because their transgressions were similar. Moab and Ammon bordered Judah on the east side across the Dead Sea. Moab was directly on the opposite side of the sea to Judah, while Ammon was to the northeast. Like Philistia, the two nations were always at odds with Judah. They reproached and taunted the kingdom of Judah and her God. Zephaniah foretold that God would destroy the two nations for their sins and make them wastelands like Sodom and Gomorrah. The prophet gave a poignant picture of what they would become, desolate like the Dead Sea. God would also give their land to the people of Judah to possess. The judgment upon Ethiopia was brief and was not specific regarding its sin. God had a record, though, and would make the people suffer by the sword. The Ethiopia mentioned here is not present-day Ethiopia, but the Cushite dynasties that ruled Egypt at the time. They were referred to as Ethiopians. In effect, this judgment was directed at Egypt, Judah's distant southern neighbor. The last of the nations to receive judgment was Assyria, Judah's neighbor to the far north. Located in present-day Iraq with Nineveh as its capital city, Assyria, along with Egypt, was a superpower of that era. The city was acclaimed as one of the wonders of the world of that period. It controlled immense wealth as the trade hub between the East and West, because the Tigris River served as the vital link between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. God's judgment was that Nineveh would become a desolate place and a wilderness. Instead of a bustling and prosperous city filled with people and activity, animals would inhabit it. This would be a terrible desolation. Conclusion: there are consequences for wickedness. God's punishment is sure to come to pass if his warnings are ignored.
For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Woe unto the inhabitants of the sea coast, the nation of the Cherethites! The word of the Lord is against you. O Canaan, the land of the Philistines, I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. And the sea coast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed thereupon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening, for the Lord their God shall visit them, and turn away their captivity. I have heard the reproach of Moab, and the revilings of the children of Ammon, whereby they have reproached my people, and magnified themselves against their border. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab shall be as Sodom, and the children of Ammon as Gomorrah, even the breeding of nettles and salt pits, and a perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall spoil them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. This shall they have for their pride, because they have reproached and magnified themselves against the people of the Lord of hosts. The Lord will be terrible unto them, for he will famish all the gods of the earth, and men shall worship him, every one from his place, even all the isles of the heathen. Ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. And he will stretch out his hand against the north, and destroy Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation, and dry like a wilderness. And flocks shall lie down in the midst of her. All the beasts of the nations, both the cormorant and the bittern, shall lodge in the upper lintels of it. Their voice shall sing in the windows, desolation shall be in the thresholds, for he shall uncover the cedar work. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none beside me. How is she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Every one that passeth by her shall hiss and wag his hand.